43 years ago today, Richard Lee's life changed forever when his 2-year-old daughter, Catrice, vanished without trace.
Despite multiple public appeals, the international investigation has not uncovered any solid leads. And on what would have been her 45th birthday, a song has been released to help keep her story alive. We'll be talking to Richard in just a moment. But first, here's a reminder of what happened to Catrice.
43 summers.
More than 4 decades on, the question of what happened to their little girl has haunted the family of Catrice Lee since the day she disappeared. It was November 1981, and Catrice had just turned 2 years old when she was shopping for treats to celebrate her birthday. It was payday, and the store was packed at the supermarket close to where her father was stationed in Germany. Unwilling to go into the trolley, the toddler briefly became separated from her family and, in a split second, vanished from sight. Despite frantic searches and continuous appeals, there was no trace of her, although the family firmly believe she's still alive. In 2017, a photo fit of a man seen with the toddler was issued, and a year later, the Royal Military Police excavated a riverbank nearby. But these were false leads. This year, an exhibition marking the toddler's disappearance will be held in Paderborn, where she vanished. And today, Song for Catrice is released. All reminders that the fight to find out what happened to her is not over.
This is her song.
And we're joined now by Catrice's father, Richard Lee. Richard, Randra and I, both of us parents, like so many people watching our programme, will, just find it hard to imagine the pain and also the strength you've had to have over 43 years. I'm sure for you, every day of those 43 years has been a difficult day, but today, each year, the day she went missing, which is also her birthday, this must be the hardest day.
Ed, it's been challenging from day one, from 1981, but more importantly, thanks for having us and thanks for giving Catrice's story a voice. I'm a father, like a lot of fathers, as you've already pointed out, are out there. I've had lots of comments. Why don't you give up? Why don't you accept it? All I would say to those people is, if you're a parent, would you give up? And the answer would be no. So here I am. I'm not going away. I will get answers. But the story literally needs to be told.
Richard, just explain to us, because I mean, you were on an army base out in Germany, and this was at the NAFI, which is the sort of, the store, the general purpose store. But it wasn't actually on the base, was it? So this was open to the public. Just explain why that bit is important and what it is now. Because people will say, after 43 years, you're not going to know who's going to remember anything after all this time. But you think that you can still jog people's memories if they were there.
I believe that to be exactly the case. She went missing from an army supermarket, for want of a better word, although we call it the NAFI, but it was on a German university campus.
Right.
And the consequences were of that. We came back the night before from a 3-week NATO exercise. It was the last period of the month. A lot of people had gone back to the United Kingdom that night, in particular the single men, so the garrison was very much depleted. But when we got into the shopping complex, we realised that the university also had its opening day. Now, the footfall within that small area was 10 times more than what it normally would be. And so what an ideal opportunity to steal a child at 2 years old. It's an absolute blank canvas. And she could be out there speaking a different language. I could be a grandfather and I don't know it.
That is the kind of the very important point, and we said that in our film as well, that you are hoping by talking about this, the song, the photos, to potentially jog somebody else's memory 43 years on, but you're also hoping that maybe Catrice could be watching, so she could see somewhere in the world this photo, and that it makes a connection in her mind as well. That is in your, for you and the family, that is still a live possibility.
Hope is eternal, Ed. Hope never goes away. It's the last thing on your mind. As far as we were concerned from day one, she was abducted. There's been no evidence whatsoever to say anything different.
No.
And as far as my family are concerned, the Royal Military Police sadly went down the wrong option and they didn't follow the wishes of the family.
What did they do?
They did nothing. That's the point.
Oh, I see.
We raised issues of Catrice having an eye operation requirement because her sister had had 2 eye operations. It wasn't until 2012 when they reinvestigated the case, 36 years later, that this information was made public. So all I would say is that the Royal Military Police have got an awful lot to answer for. That's why I'm here, to put out that my daughter was taken.
I mean, if somebody arrives with a 2-year-old child out of nowhere in your apartment block or in your neighbourhood or at the school, I mean, it's hard to explain that away, isn't it, to people, if that's what you think has happened. Is it because you say that there's been, I mean, they excavated the riverbanks, they looked everywhere, but her wellies have never been found, for example.
There's been no clothing whatsoever. And don't forget, at the time she went missing, there was a market for selling children to the east. The Berlin Wall was still up.
Right.
There were no video cameras around at the time. There are so many options that could have been taken.
Yeah, and they didn't close the border. No, the police just didn't enact what you would expect, the normal procedure around a missing child, did they, at the time?
The first 48 hours, apparently, are the golden hours. I've learnt that over the years. We asked, could you inform the border crossings where you had to show your passport?
Absolutely.
Could you inform medical facilities, the Catrice's requirement for an eye operation?
Yeah.
And they did nothing. Right. And what annoys me is that they won't take ownership of the failures. They just fob it off. And because they are a government-run institution who continue to mark their own homework, they are getting away with it.
You tried to return your service medals to the Ministry of Defence, and tell us what happened.
Well, I got into Downing Street and I was informed that they don't take personal possessions. So I was turned away, but I did hand a petition in. But equally so at the time, I felt that petition was being handed in to an establishment where the lights were on, but there was no one at home.
Right.
And I got very little reaction, and the response that I got from them, they informed me that the Royal Military Police continued to push information out that my daughter is still missing. Are you aware of the fact that my daughter's still missing?
Unbelievable.
No, you're not. And I'm not aware of any information that was pushed out beyond 2018.
Well, the Ministry of Defence have told us this. Our thoughts and sympathies remain with Catrice Lee's family. Defence Serious Crime Unit assumed primacy of the investigation in 2022 into the disappearance of Catrice, and that we continue to appeal for new evidence. It's almost unbearable for any of us to even put ourselves in your shoes, because it is too dark a place for us to go. It's your life. How on earth have you kept yourself together for 40? I know you've got another daughter, and Catrice has an older sister. Is that part of what's kept you? I mean, you have to continue for her.
Well, during the early days, we lived 2 lives. We wrapped Natasha in cotton wool, the older daughter.
Because she was only, what was she?
She was 7 years old.
Oh.
Later on, we found out that apparently that was the wrong thing to do, but we didn't have a blueprint to follow. We did what we thought was right at the time, and a lot more people around the military community were holding their children that little bit tighter because they were aware of Catrice's disappearance and how quickly it happened.
You've been campaigning, talking about this, particularly on her birthday, the day she disappeared, for 43 years. Have you, at any point, had any news, any leads, anybody come forward? I certainly wonder whether until it's good news, maybe maybe not having bad news has been okay, because that still keeps the possibility alive.
Well, I say no news is good news, Ed. However, we've had fantastic response by people who have come forward, who think that they're Catrice, and sadly, because they don't know who they are, they don't know who their birth parents are.
Goodness.
And they fall in the bracket in the age group.
Of course.
And they've come forward and they've disappeared with dignity. Yeah. Unfortunately, within that mix, you have other people that turn nasty, and they won't go away, and they continue. I haven't had a DNA test to say that they are Catrice.
Oh, and every time that happens, there's a flicker of hope, and then for you, then disappointment. And as you say, sometimes, well, look, everybody watching this programme will be massively supporting you and feeling your pain, but hoping beyond hope, in some ways, that the news will come. I
hope for the same thing, Ed, and I appreciate the time that your programme's given me, and hopefully we will get answers in the near future.
Thank you so much.
Richard, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.